All right, let's just dive right in. What if your mind wasn't just, a jumble of thoughts and feelings, but an actual operating system? And what if that OS was less like the shiny new software on your phone and more like some haunted, abandoned code from 1995? Well, that's the whole idea behind Khaeos OS version 2.0. It's basically a user's guide for a mind haunted by the digital age.
This quote just nails the starting point. The core idea here is that the modern struggle isn't some active war that we're supposed to be winning. Nope. The battle for the future we were all promised, it's already over, and we lost. Now we're just wandering the ruins, dealing with the ghosts of all those futures that never showed up.
So, Section 1 really sets the stage. Forget this idea that you're some heroic cyberpunk hacker fighting the system. Khaeos OS has a totally different role for you. You're not the hero. You're more like the lone system administrator, or maybe even just the janitor, stuck maintaining a decaying, seriously haunted system.
The whole philosophy behind this OS is a concept called hauntology, which was really brought into the spotlight by the late Mark Fisher. It's that feeling, that deep down sense that we're being haunted by the ghosts of futures that were supposed to happen, but didn't. So in this system, things like anxiety or burnout, they aren't just personal failures or little errors. They're the ghosts. They're the spectral proof of these unlived lives, these timelines that just failed to load. Now, to make this all feel real, the OS gives us this incredibly powerful setting for our own psyche. Just picture it. You're in an abandoned shopping mall from the mid-90s, and it's 3 in the morning. The neon lights are still buzzing, the fountains are totally dry, and you can just hear this slowed-down muzak echoing through the empty halls. That eerie, liminal space, that's the landscape of the modern mind. Okay, so let's move into Section 2 and see how this all connects. Now that we're inside this mental mall, we start to realize that all the weird aesthetics, the colors, the glitches, the emptiness, they're not random at all. They actually make up a user interface that we can learn to read to understand what's going on inside our own heads. The first state is called data, and it's represented by this hot pink. This is that glossy, polished mask of the ego. Think of the whole vaporwave vibe. Perfect marble floors, fake palm trees, that feeling of corporate synergy. It's when you feel competent, professional, totally in control, but it's also completely artificial. It's the safe space you project to everyone else. But then, the system starts to glitch. This state, with its jarring lime green, reframes a panic attack as a rendering error. I mean, what a great metaphor. It's like having a bad internet connection inside your brain. The world suddenly feels uncanny, distorted, and it just fails to load correctly, kind of like a corrupted JPEG from the early 2000s. This is the whole aesthetic of weirdcore. And finally, there's the void, pure black. This is the system's kernel, its deepest level. Aesthetically, this is pure liminal space, or that internet folklore of the backrooms, those endless, creepy, empty hallways. This state represents the unconscious. It can feel like depression or total numbness, a place of maximum entropy. But here's the key. It's also the system's reboot state. It's where all those lost futures are stored. So what exactly are these ghosts haunting our mall? Section 3 explains. And this is a huge shift in thinking. We're moving from combat to forensics. We're not here to fight demons, we're here to understand them as bits of legacy code, as corrupted files that just need to be recovered and understood. The main tool we get for this forensic work is something called the Shadow Dictionary. And its function is brilliant. It translates our vague, overwhelming feelings into precise, technical error logs. It's the key to turning that chaotic emotional state of, "I'm freaking out," into a diagnosable problem like, say, Error 404, reality not found. Let's just walk through a few examples, because this is where it really clicks. If you've ever felt like the explorer, which is common with ADHD, the technical failure is a RAM overflow. Your working memory is just totally saturated. You know that feeling of having 50 browser tabs open in your brain? That's it. The impulsive jester is like a chaos monkey, a program designed to intentionally break things. And the martyr, the people pleaser, they're a victim of scope creep and technical debt, which always leads to the burnout of customer service purgatory. And this quote just drives the whole point home. The goal isn't exorcism, it's archaeology. We're basically digital archivists of our own decay, just trying to piece together corrupted data from a timeline that was promised to us but never actually happened. So this is all fascinating, but what do we do with all this information? Well, Section 4 lays out the ultimate goal of Khaeos OS, to move from being a passive user of your own mind, a a victim of its glitches, to becoming its active system administrator. The key metric for making that happen is something called telemetry latency. It sounds technical, but it's simple. It's the time gap between an internal event, like an emotional trigger, and your conscious mind actually noticing it happened. The entire goal of this OS is to get that gap as close to zero as humanly possible. This slide lays out the contrast perfectly. On one side, you have fate. That's when you're stuck in an infinite loop, acting like a non-playable character, an NPC in your own life, just running on a pre-written script. But on the other side, you have agency. That's when you can no-clip, you know that video game term for passing through walls, right out of those automated behaviors. You switch from pure reaction to conscious observation, from being in screensaver mode to entering debug mode.
And here it is, the governing equation for the whole system. As that telemetry latency, that awareness gap, gets closer and closer to zero, the state of fate literally transforms into agency. Getting real-time observability over your own internal state, it isn't just a nice thought, it's the mathematical path to taking control.
All right, let's get to section 5 and talk about some practical tools. How do we actually debug our own system? Well, Khaeos OS provides a specific toolkit for exactly this kind of cognitive forensics. The main tool is the Nostalgia Debugger, and you can imagine it as a script running on some old retro computer terminal. The moment you detect a mental anomaly, a sudden mood swing, or weird impulse, you run the script. It doesn't ask how do you feel, it asks for data. What's the trigger? What archetype is active? What's the specific system failure? It forces you to log the event instead of just getting swept away by it. Another incredibly powerful tool is the locked box strategy. Think of it as a containment protocol for harmful impulses, or what the OS calls weird core packets. When you detect one, you classify its threat level and then you contain it. You execute the impulse in a safe, isolated environment, like typing out that angry text into a local note file that you never, ever send. The chaotic energy gets spent, but the real-world blast radius is zero. So ultimately, the big takeaway is this. We are running on legacy biological hardware that we can't really upgrade. The objective isn't to change the machine itself, because that's impossible. The objective is to optimize the software that's running on it. We can't stop the ghosts from showing up, but we can absolutely learn to rewrite the code that decides how we respond to them. And that brings us to the final, really empowering goal. To use these tools to walk out of the confusing, liminal back rooms of your unconscious and step back into the main concourse of your mind. Not as a passive consumer just wandering the halls, but as the one in charge, as the manager. Which leaves us with one final thought to really chew on. If your own psyche is an operating system running its own unique code and haunted by its own unique ghosts, what error message is it displaying for you right now?